Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Jigyasa by the Nudge Institute. We'll just get started in a minute as people start joining in. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday evening. We know most of you might be between your commute at work or at work. We really appreciate that you took the time to be here and join us. Just quickly get started in a minute. Great. So let's get started. Like I said, welcome again to Jigyasa. This is an event that we do occasionally to, spread awareness about the social impact space, talk about various opportunities we have with the Nudge, or just give you insights into what Nudge is doing, what are the kind of people we're looking for, and how you can be a part of this journey. My name is Shruti, and I'm part of the People and Culture team here, and I'll be moderating this space. We also have our panelists. We'll get to them in some time. But before we go to the panelists, go to the topic, just wanted to give you a brief overview of what the Nudge does and why we're here primarily. So, talking about the mission or the core ethos behind the Nudge, we believe that every Indian deserves a dignified life out of poverty, and it is well within our means to achieve that goal in this lifetime. So everything that we do at the Nudge is based on this ethos and this guiding principle, which is what all Nudsters, as we call our employees, believe and focus on. This is just, the Nudge is an action institute. Our goal, like I said, is to work towards a poverty-free India within our lifetime. We understand this is a very audacious goal, but we are working towards this by partnering with governments, markets, and civil societies. And how we want to do this is by building resilient livelihoods for all. An overview or some facts about the Nudge and how we started. So we started in 2015, which is one program, which is Gurukul, and currently we have 8 programs up and running. We have more than 400 employees across 9 states in India. Out of all the programs, we've worked to employ more than 16K youth. We've served more than 100K households. We've had 4 annual convenings, 3 grand challenges, and currently 29 senior leaders working with governments. And we're looking forward to do much, much more in this space. This is a just brief overview of our current structure. We'll get into this in detail, with the panelists, but we currently work in 3 streams. We have direct livelihood programs, which are economic inclusion program, Asha Kiran, Refarm, and urban entrepreneurship, where we actually work with, people on the ground, help them, come up with livelihood, alternatives and solutions. We have a livelihood ecosystem that we're working, where we work with talent, capital, and markets through the Indian Administrative Fellowship, Forum, Social Entrepreneurship, the Nudge Prize, and an Agri Accelerator program. We also work with governments here. Of course, we also have our other enabler functions, people in culture, marketing, finance, just like any other organization. We have an impact hub. We have fundraising partnerships and government alliances as well. We'll get into this in the discussion with the panelists. So let's meet our panelists for today. Our first panelist that we have is Sriram. He leads global partnerships and fundraising at the Nudge. Has been a member of TNI's leadership since its inception in 2015. So he's one of the oldest employees at the Nudge. He has about 18 years of experience across various domains like public mobilization, individual fundraising, and healthcare consulting. It's very difficult to describe what Sriram does at the Nudge. He's actually done bits and pieces of everything. Really interested to hear Sriram's views, talk about his experience, and just understand all the pieces that he's worked in. Sriram, thank you so much for joining us today. Anything you'd like to, say before we get started?
No, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to be respectful to everybody's time. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Sriram. And our next panelist we have is Sonali. Sonali Jain is our entrepreneur in residence at the Nudge, whose primary focus is exploring tech-first solutions for building livelihoods. She's worked in global leadership roles at Google Cloud, Deloitte, and Infosys across US, Europe, and India. So tech-first approach, definitely. She's somebody who's very passionate about exploring tech and very passionate about the social impact space, and is always on the lookout for disruptive ideas to, explore and break the space. Sonali, really, really glad to have you here. Anything you'd like to share?
Just really excited for the conversation and looking forward to the questions and engaging with people from the people who are fellow travelers on the journey.
Thank you, Sonali. So, this is the agenda for today, as you all know, which is transitioning into careers that drive social change. And a little background as to why we chose this topic. Primarily, I work in the talent acquisition team, and I've realized, me and my fellow talent partners, that a lot of the questions that we get are from people who want to make this switch. Right? They understand that this is a very tough decision to make. There are a lot of considerations, a lot of factors to keep in mind, but often they don't find answers to these questions, and they get stuck or are not able to understand what next step to take, which is why we have two people who've made this journey quite successfully, to understand what is their perspective, how has it been for them. And this discussion would obviously not be complete without understanding their own transition journey. So this is a question to both of you. How is your transition like, and what motivated you to shift to this space? Sriram, if we can start from you, just an overview of how has it been for you so far in the social impact space?
Um, I don't know whether I should call myself a convert anymore. It's been 13 long years in the social sector, spanning across two organizations. Prior to my move into the social sector, I spent about 8 to 9 years in consulting, primarily focused on healthcare. So I was an analyst at heart, moving slowly into the business management function. The transition into the social sector, with the benefit of hindsight and post facto rationalization, I can say probably stemmed from a place of anger, attributed largely to what happened in the case of Nirbhaya in 2012. So I was looking for an opportunity to unleash that some anger in some way, not very deliberate, not very intentional, but what started off as what today people refer to as a side hustle. We essentially built a portal that crowdsourced information on all forms of violence that was happening against women in the country, and just built a repository of data as an asset that could be made available to somebody who we thought will do something about it. Right? So we did not think about where will this go, where will it land. It just came from a place of wanting to do something, and eventually we transferred that asset to Amnesty International India, which is one of the world's largest human rights organizations. And it was a very organic transition. Fell in love gradually. I would not call it a love at first sight, but I would say the way I've chosen to sort of describe it is I dated the sector for a while. I fell in love with it gradually, and now very, very happily married. And it's been 13 years now, 4 years with Amnesty in India, and the last 9 years with the United States.
Thank you, Sriram. I think that's a perfect analogy to describe your journey, that you were, flirting with it, dating it, and then eventually evolved into a marriage. I think I've heard you speak in previous conversations as well around your analogy. So glad that everyone's getting to know about it as well now. Sonali, same question to you. How was your journey like? How did you decide to make the social impact space your home?
Yeah, so I did my engineering and an MBA just like so many of my peers did, and started my career in IT, and then moved post MBA, moved to strategy consulting, did that for tech companies, and then worked in a tech company as well. And I was very excited about the work I was doing. I feel like I am a problem solver at heart, and I was getting to solve really big, important problems. And that built confidence for me, and I felt like I could tackle bigger and more complex problems. And I'm an ambitious person, so for me, being ambitious meant going after the biggest, baddest problems out there. And poverty really fit the bill in every way possible. And in some ways, for me, it was more the intellectually demanding nature of the work in the social sector that pulled me towards it. And then meeting with Atul and understanding the vision of the nudge, the big, bold vision of Poverty Free India really resonated with that temperament that I had. Meeting with people in the leadership team, including Sriram, was very impressive. Really impressed by both the honesty, the rigor in thinking, but also really very, very high purpose orientation. And who doesn't want to work in an environment where people are motivated by purpose and also very capable and competent? And so it seemed like a no-brainer for me to join. Now I work as an entrepreneur in residence, and I am focused on solving for livelihoods for urban poverty. Specifically, the mission is that how can we make self-employment a sustainable source of livelihood in India for people.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much, Sonali. I think we're all very excited to see how the project that you and your team are working is going to shape out. I know it's in very initial stages, but we're all really looking forward to that. Um, to the audience, please feel free to drop your questions on LinkedIn via comments. We'll definitely do our best to address them at the end of the session. We do have a couple of questions prepared, all based on interactions with people we've had, common questions we've received, and hope that most of your questions about how to make this transition, how to start this journey, get answered through this. Sonali, I'll direct the next question to you, because you are somebody who's worked, in a programmatic space currently, and you've also worked with the strategy and operations team here, so you have an understanding of the programs. I think we understand that, the nudge focuses on livelihoods as a way to, solve the overall goal of poverty, but each of these programs are very distinct, right? Very, very different from each other in terms of the people they target, the design, and the execution itself. So I think one question that comes up is who exactly gets to work or be part of this program? So can you share some insights on what are the type of personas we typically look out for programs and those kind of opportunities?
Yeah. So let me start with what work we do. I know a lot of it is on the website, but sometimes it's not clear how so many different things relate to each other. So as an organization, we do two kinds of work. One is direct community facing work, where we are working with people who are living in poverty and working on problems that will help them come out of poverty. The other type of work is ecosystem building work. And in ecosystem building work, our thesis is that just like today, if you are a for-profit entrepreneur, you are able to find people to hire and raise capital to build the company, access technology, and policy supports this work. We need talent, capital, technology, policy to also support the work of entrepreneurs, both within the organization and outside Nudge, to support their work and make sure that they also succeed in solving the problems they want to solve. And so that's why we do both kinds of work. So in our livelihood programs, which is community facing, we have 4 different programs. One is our economic inclusion program, where we work with people living in extreme poverty. And we are running a 3-year, very intensive hand-holding plus grant support kind of an intervention to help them graduate out of poverty in the 3 years that we work with them. These are people who are today living on less than 25,000 rupees a year as a household income to start with, and it changes from state to state. The second program is Asha Kiran, where we work with women from landless and marginal farming households, where we help them practice backyard poultry and backyard goatry so that it can enable a supplemental income and more agency for these women in the households. The third program is Refarm, where we are working with small farmers, and we want to help small farmers increase their income significantly. And today the program is just starting. This year we've started executions, early stages. And the fourth program is the one that I'm leading, which I already talked about. The ecosystem building work is where you will find that Nudge runs one of the largest non-profit incubators and accelerator for non-profit startups, for entrepreneurs who want to solve for livelihoods in poverty. We also run Nudge Prize, which is our grand challenge platform, as well as Forum, which is our convening platform, and we run Indian Administrative Fellowship, where we are able to bring senior leaders, CXO level leaders from corporate sector to work closely with senior bureaucrats in state governments and central ministries. A lot of these programs are meant to solve for what I mentioned earlier, which is talent, capital, technology, and policy as enabling conditions so that the ecosystem thrives and people who are solving are able to get to success. Now, what kind of people we look for? If you think about any thriving organization that wants to build new products, solve complex problems, and work with people, you will find that the skills are very similar. We look for skills in product development and design. We look for skills in stakeholder management. We also look for people who are good at communications, as well as we hire people from engineering backgrounds, from design backgrounds, from all sorts of backgrounds. So whatever you may be doing in a different sector, there will be something for you as part of what we are building here.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Sonali, for clarifying that. I think the key point is that we're looking for people across all domains, and there are opportunities open, despite whatever educational background or experience you come from. I think it's all about, you finding a resonance with the program and, being able to do your best towards it. Definitely. Thank you so much for that. Sriram, the next question is to you, considering you lead the partnership vertical. Um, Everyone, when we talk about a nonprofit, thinks it's only about the programs that we do. But I think a lot of people do not have insight into the, you know, traditional kind of functions that exist in, a for-profit or larger organizations as well. For example, finance, marketing, people in culture. Nobody really thinks about these things. Even fundraising or the equivalent in a for-profit space, like a sales function, nobody really thinks a nonprofit, has these departments. As someone who's working there and leading, that bit, can you just share an overview of how these teams look like and what kind of opportunities are typically available there?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think just like we like to we call ourselves as a not-for-profit organization, and some of you, thanks to numerous interactions, sometimes I've been asked, is it the same as an NGO? The answer is yes. We are a non-governmental organization, but we like to call ourselves a not-for-profit organization. We are an institution like any other institution. Just like any organization needs a HR team, a people and culture team, a team that brings in capital into the organization, a team that is able to form meaningful partnerships either with markets or with government or with other stakeholders or contributing to solving your problem statement. This works exactly the same way. So some of the we also have a go-to-market function. So go-to-market functions comprise of three capabilities. One is ability to raise money, manage money, and grow the money. The second one is marketing, which takes care of brand, public relations, website, social media, and all our external communications. Then you have performance marketeers, you have digital marketeers, you have people who run campaigns, it's outreach campaigns. All of these capabilities nests itself within the marketing function. The third one within the go-to-market functions is the government partnerships, which also is something that I lead. The reason why the government partnerships team exists is, as a non-profit, we don't think it is in our job description to be scaling programs or scaling the organization. What we really want to do here is to scale the impact that is coming out of the Nudge Institute. And we believe that either the governments or the markets or the private sector are the ones who are truly positioned for scale. So what we try to solve for is pick up those problem statements that are today unmet or unresolved by either markets. Despite the will of the government, sometimes there are last mile challenges. So we try to solve those problems, generate evidence, data, and publish those impact studies, and then look at what are those barriers that today exist in the government or the private sector that disincentivizes them from solving these problems. Then we work with the government and markets to scale these solutions at population scale. So go-to-market functions typically take these to government and markets with the intent of raising money, building partnerships with the government, or to tell our story to the world through the marketing function. So that's your go-to-market. We also have the horizontal functions or the enabling functions, as we call it, which is one is the people and culture, which basically is the talent acquisition team. Then there is a culture and engagement team, and then there is a people operations team. All of these reside under the people and culture function. Then you have the finance function, which is your accounts, payables, receivables, treasury, investments, managing the existing capital that is there. How do we grow that? All of those nests within the finance function. Then we also have an impact function, which is an independent function that is within the Nudge Institute that you can refer to as a guardian angel that holds all the program teams accountable to deliver impact. That impact team is also nested within the Nudge Institute. So these are the horizontal or enabling functions. The kind of people, what do we look for in enabling functions? And perhaps if I may extend that even broadly to the program teams. Sure. I think what we primarily look for in this order is people with a boundaryless ownership and an attitude that brings that boundaryless ownership with a single-minded obsession to deliver impact. Right? So that's a reflection of the attitude that they bring to the table. The second and equally important one is their readiness to make this commitment. And by readiness, I specifically mean two things. One is uh, I often say that this is not a career prospect or a career change, but it is a recalibration of your life design. Right? If one is committed to solving these problems for the next decade or so in a meaningful way, there is a calibration or a recalibration of life that is required. And what I mean by that specifically, this is probably one of the best times to take that plunge because no longer is India in a place where a career in the social impact ecosystem is unviable. Today, people who are making the transition into the social sector can actually lead a comfortable, meaningful, viable life without having to make too many sacrifices. But it still requires a recalibration of, let's say, what is the trade-off that you're making between maximizing your own wealth and contributing to solving the societal problems. So there is a little bit of the trade-off, but is that trade-off going to pinch you deeply? Perhaps not. Was that trade-off going to pinch you in the past? The answer was yes. So that's the change that has happened. The and therefore one has to be thoughtful before taking this plunge because it's an important decision that people make with consultation with their family members and their well-wishers. The second one is that none of us here are volunteers. We are fully paid staff and professionals. So we do get paid for what we do. Uh, but it is also something, if somebody were to ask me, I would easily say this is probably the hardest job that I have done in the last 18, 19 years. So it does come, there is no lack of intensity. There is no lack of discipline, rigor, accountability, targets. I lead the fundraising team. We have quarterly targets, half-yearly targets, and annual targets. So it's pretty much the language that perhaps the audience in this event might be used to. I don't think you will see any difference in the language that is being spoken within the Nudge Institute, whether we are not for profit or for profit. So, if that answers your question, sure.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Sriram, for that, very elaborate answer. I'm pretty sure everyone can relate very well to the, point on life calibration and basically, get an understanding of what a journey for a nutster is like. We'll quickly move to the next question. I think, Sriram, you answered this to a certain extent in terms of, based on your interactions with multiple people in fundraising, also as part of potential nudsters that you interview. You did speak about attitude being a very important element of, what we look for and the willingness to be here. Anything else that you quickly want to touch on in terms of, what is it that helps you decide whom is it that you want to work with, not just in your team, but across the nudge as well?
Yeah, I can start and would love for Sonali to chime in as well. I think, like I said, in that order, we look for attitude, followed by smarts, and followed by skills. Under attitude, we look for why is it that you would want to do this and commit your time in order to solve challenges. So, what is that reason? That if you can double, triple click on those reasons, that will be super useful for us to better understand you and where you're coming from. The second one is the financial readiness. There is a trade-off, and that trade-off is not unanimous for everybody, particularly people in the upper middle and the senior management and in the senior leadership team. When they are making a transition from the private sector to the social sector, there is a compensation slash that one takes. Now, is that something that you can absorb? Is that viable for you? Is something that you may want to think about deeply. Followed by smarts. And in attitude, we also look at a person's ability to collaborate very well internally and with external stakeholders. We look at their sense of having had a demonstrable track record in delivering results on anything that they may have done in their life. So, for example, in fundraising, I don't necessarily look for people who have had revenue targets, but I just look for people who have had a track record of having demonstrated results. It could be in any fashion that they have worked in. So result-oriented, solutions-oriented, very goal-driven, people who can imagine and envision scale, people who can understand technology, people who can, stay very committed. There are moments of intensity like any other organizations that wants to achieve a lot. So those things are will encompass under the ambit of attitude. On smarts, we look at the ability, because it's a very different context, the skill sets that many of you in this audience may have acquired over a period of time are very much transferable to the social sector. However, the context in which those skill sets are applied may be different, are different indeed. And therefore, the ability to unlearn at a fast pace and relearn at an equally fast pace becomes very important. Second thing is, I think a lot of humility is something, it's a very, very humbling experience. So the humility to unlearn and relearn is another way of sort of putting it. The third one I would say is the ability to roll up one's sleeves and perhaps do things that you may have done 5, 10 years back in your careers. Right? Because one of the things that the sector does not have the privilege of is the kind of resources available at your disposal in your current avatar, which is the private sector. Right? We function under quite a lot of constraints, and therefore, how do you maximize your impact within the constraints that are a part of the reality becomes an important part to absorb and internalize. So there might be instances where you are picking up things that you may have done a few years back, but it becomes important to roll up one's sleeves and tell them. Sonali, if you want to add.
I think we will continue the conversation. Go ahead, Shruti.
Sure. I think that answers quite a bit of the question, Sriram, and I think Sonali's question that I had to ask her is leading to that. While you spoke about the senior leadership, pitch and how the experience has been for someone, one thing that we're noticing quite a bit is that a lot of young professionals are actually wanting to start their careers, transition quite early into the social impact space. And that's something that we've seen quite a bit. And so, Sonali, as somebody who works with a very young team, wanted to understand any recommendations you had for young professionals who want to make this space, dip their feet in, if I had to call it that way.
Yeah. So one of the things that has happened as a result of joining the Nudge is a sense of envy for the young people who joined the Nudge, because when I see their trajectories, their journeys at Nudge, they have grown significantly in the time they have spent here. And it is actually very logical because they are working on some of the most complex and difficult problems. And because we work in lean teams with limited resources, you also get a lot more responsibility early on in your career. So as a result of working on intellectually demanding problems, getting more responsibility early on in your career, over a very short period of time, you go through steep learning curves. And if you take a slightly midterm view of your career, you end up seeing that you have grown so much that you never thought was possible. If I compare my own experience early on in my career, I feel like I used to think I had a great, awesome career, and now I feel that it could have been 10x better if I had joined the social sector earlier. So that is one thing to keep in mind, that the potential for learning and personal and professional growth is exceptionally high in the social sector. The other thing to remember is that, as Sriram mentioned, think about your why. Why do you really want to do work in the social development sector? And be clear about that reason and rationale, because when you join, it will be difficult. As Sriram mentioned, you will unlearn a lot of things and you will learn a whole lot more, and it will require you to take full ownership and go deep into it. We also put a lot of rigor and thought into building products and solutions that we build. So you will be challenged a lot, and hence knowing your why really helps. And I think beyond that, I would say that purpose orientation and working with people who are purpose oriented and capable leads to a great experience at work. Right? The fun part of working in a sector like this, in an organization like this, and seeing your work changing lives is exceptionally gratifying, right? And that is something to take into account. However, it is not for the faint of heart. So you can think of this as an opportunity for you to figure out whether this is something for you. Don't put the pressure to say this is how I'm going to change my life forever. Come and try and solve this problem, give it your best, and then see where it takes you. You can think of it as a stint that gives you a lot more than you will invest in it. That is my advice to people who are early in their careers and thinking about the journey in the social sector.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much for that, Sonali. So I think we've been getting a lot of questions on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. Before I get to that, there are two questions that did come in to us, in a couple of my conversations, to be very honest, as well as some other things that we've been observing. Uh, so we'll just answer those questions, and then we'll move to answering some of the questions on LinkedIn. So we did a recent poll on the Nudges LinkedIn page where we saw that 49% of people voted that their biggest concern while transitioning into this space was salary and benefits. I know that both of you, Sriram and Sonali, touched a little bit on the salary part of it, but any other light that you want to throw, maybe Sonali, we can start with you. What do you believe about this, result that we've gotten on the polls?
I think this is a legitimate concern, first of all, because depending on where you are in your career, the amount of pay cut that you might have to take is going to change. So, in an early stage, the pay cut is less, and as you keep going up in your career, the pay cut is more. But at the same time, I would also say that your whatever salary you do make, as Sriram also mentioned, it does not pinch, which means you can have a reasonable lifestyle, all your needs are met. And I don't think that my lifestyle has changed significantly as a result of moving to the social sector, not because of the prior experience, but just because of the current experience. So it is really not so much just about the salary, it is many things altogether. As Sriram also mentioned, think about why are you doing this? What do you expect to get out of this? How will you balance the purpose orientation, skill building, and plus the compensation part? Compensation alone is not the only consideration. However, it is not going to be a deal breaker for many, many people. So it is worth exploring to figure out whether this aligns with your needs or not.
Got it. Sriram, anything you'd want to add here?
Well, I think one of the things, just to build on what Sonali said, right? So, I mean, I know I did ask this question to myself. Right? So, if I'm making a trade off on financial terms, what am I gaining if I'm losing something? Right? I must admit that I didn't have to make much of a trade off because I made this transition way back, even before I made any meaningful money. Right? So, I didn't make money in the first place to give up money, right? Unlike many people. But if I have to put myself in the shoes, I think what one of the biggest gains for me has been uh, just the surround sound of amazingly smart people. Right? So every day, one of the things that keeps me going is just the sheer intellectual capability and the ability of the people who surround me, and therefore it is an infinite spiral of learning opportunities that feeds into me. Right? So I traditionally not, I don't consider myself a very smart person, but I'm just the fact that I'm surrounded by exceptionally smart people, I think is days filled with learning. That is one of the biggest gains that I would say people get. Um, and yeah, in the last 13 years, if I could reflect and say, have I suffered from Monday blues or Friday oranges? I don't know. But it's not been the case. And I'm not saying this to, it's not a fact that I'm working at the nudge. I think my answer would not have been any different if I had worked at any other social purpose organization. So that's also been extremely illuminating when I reflect back over the last 13 years.
Got it. Got it. Sriram, thank you so much for that. The second question that we did hear quite a bit, and I think both of you as interviewers would also hear this, and this is something I hear very frequently. How do you describe the culture at the Nudge? What makes TNI, the Nudge here, a good place to work? Anything you would want to highlight, Sriram, if we can start with you this time?
Sure. Let me just go with what we call as the spirit of the nudge, a proxy for what some of you may understand as values of an organization. So we believe that values, as Shruti said in her opening remarks, we are a very diverse organization spread across 9 states, 450 people who come from very different backgrounds. So what we believe is that the fundamental core values around which the organization is designed and built to run remain the same, but the way these values manifest in many different states among many different constituencies of people is what we call as culture. Right? So there is a lot of microcosms of cultures which we think is very healthy, something that we acknowledge. But the fundamental four values that we stick to are one, keeping the purpose at the center. which means that every decision that we make is keeping in mind the communities that we have chosen to serve. And therefore, even if I look at the enabling and the support functions, they act in the service of the program. And the program acts in the service of the communities who we choose to serve. That's what we mean by purpose at the center. The second one is founder's mindset, which I'm assuming a lot of people in this audience can relate to. A lot of ownership, or what I like to call as boundaryless ownership, to function with a very strong entrepreneurial founder's mindset, as if this problem belongs to me and it is mine. The third one is thinking solutions at population scale. This is something that we get asked quite often, at least I have been asked, is India has a number of pocket-sized innovations that deliver outstanding impact, but at very small scale. Now, out of these solutions that work very well, very few of them are scalable, and out of those that are scalable, very few scale. Right? So we are focused on, with all due respect to all the outstanding work that is being done by the fraternity here, we specifically focus on solutions that have a potential to scale, and if they do, we want to scale them. All right. So that's solutions at population scale. So thinking and imagining solutions at population scale is the third value system. And the fourth one is the collaborative spirit of working together, and what we define as better together. We can all work individually, but if you have to go really far, I don't think there's an option but to work better together. So those are our fundamental value systems. Would love for Sonali to add. There's more.
Yeah, Sonali, anything you wanted to talk about the culture bit from your side?
I think the way I describe the culture at the Nudge is in line with the spirit of the Nudge, but more importantly, think about this as joining an organization which has a very bold vision, and we have no idea how we're going to get there. We have a strategy, but it's going to change a lot, right? So you will come and you will shape the culture. We consider culture to be fluid. How much ever you try to create certain boundary conditions, it's also ultimately the people who work in an organization who make up the culture. So you will come in an organization which is constantly evolving, adapting, and growing, and you will contribute to that culture. And the reason why I consider this as a great place to work is because you're constantly challenged, which means you're growing significantly. You're working with people who are purpose oriented, passionate, which makes work fun. You don't feel jaded, you don't feel there is no quiet quitting kind of a mindset here. We really care about the problems we are wanting to solve. Three, you are working on difficult things, but you also get support. And there are a lot of different people solving for poverty and livelihood building work at Nudge in so many different ways. We talked about that so many different programs that we have that actually allows you to build your knowledge and domain experience also in a way that is unique to the organization. So there are a lot of things. Because I'm a learning and growth motivated person, I also personally think about this as a great culture for people who are looking for that impact and learning and growth.
Got it. Got it. Sonali, thank you so much for that. Considering we have about 22 minutes to be very precise, we'll take a look at some of the questions that have come through LinkedIn. What I'll do is I'll quickly highlight these questions so that everyone can, take a look at the what are the questions we're looking to answer. I think there are a lot of questions about how to apply, how to reach out. I'll take that because I'm part of the talent acquisition team. So would highly encourage all of you to check out our careers page. Any opportunities that are open are usually up on our careers page. Please, apply there, and we'll reach out to you as soon as we can. I understand sometimes it takes time to get responses, but considering that we are hiring for quite a few roles, there can be some delay from our end. So please, really sorry if there has been a delay. But in case anyone wants to reach out, you can find all of us on LinkedIn. Sriram, Sonali are also quite active on LinkedIn, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you have. You can, reach out to any one of us at the Nudge as well on LinkedIn to, talk to us, or else please apply on our careers page. We do take a look at, all of the applications that we get and do our best to respond to you as well. There were a couple of questions around volunteering. At this point, we are currently hiring mostly for full-time roles, but in case anything changes, we'll definitely keep you updated. I think the a question that we can, look to answer is, do you guys work with government bodies? How do you push for change and have impact at a larger scale? So Sriram, I'll direct this to you since you also lead the government alliances bit. You did talk a little bit about work with government, but what are your thoughts here?
Yeah. So let me just maybe elaborate a little bit on where I started from. I think if you historically look at examples that have happened in India, now let me take, for example, the microfinance story. Right? Microfinance, for people who may not know in the audience, were actually started by about 6 to 7 non-profits in India who took inspiration from Dr. Mohammed Yunus's work in Bangladesh, came back to India and started implementing microfinance in their own constituencies. Now, when India started seeing that when you give money to urban or rural poor, particularly in this case the rural poor, that there was a 99% recovery of those repayments coming back to the lender. Right? Now, then markets started seeing an opportunity here that I can actually build a viable business model around this while equally serving the poorest of the poor, right, or the poor. Then there was a lobbying done with RBI to remove the interest rate cap, which was initially 18%, stretched to 24% over a period of about 2 3 years of lobbying. And then it turned out to be a very, very thriving ecosystem of microfinance today in India, which has enabled access to credit to millions of borrowers who otherwise until then did not have access to credit. Right? Now, this journey would not have been possible without government participation, without private sector participation, and therefore it becomes imperative for non-profit organizations, at least we believe that, is that the only way you can look at truly scaling a solution is by working with the government. Now, in the government today, we work with about 15, for lack of a better word, I'm saying agencies in the government. So we do a lot of work with the Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Ministry of Agriculture and Family Welfare, Niti Aayog, which is the Central Planning Commission of India, the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor of India. We work with about 10 state governments across Jharkhand, Rajasthan, West Bengal, Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka. So about 8 to 10 state governments where we are working very closely with the state missionaries in order to scale an evidence-based program that we have already come out with. So now it's time for us to scale the program because the impact of the program, demonstrated impact of the program that results in increase in income of a household, savings of a household, access to credit for a household has been proven at a certain scale. If you have to really now scale it to millions of people across India, that's the only way we can do it with the government. So that's an example of what it means to work with the government, both at the center and at the state. So how do we orchestrate these partnerships? What does it mean to interact? We do a lot of work primarily with bureaucrats and the bureaucracy in India, which so far has been an incredible learning experience. We'll see where we go from here.
Thank you for that, Sriram. I hope that question is answered and you have clarity on that, Suyash. Next question, I think I'll direct to Sonali. So basically, somebody wants to understand, tips for someone who wants to shift from development, consulting, or less fieldwork kind of experience to a core beneficiary-facing kind of role. So I think since you do have, I can see some parallels between this. So would want to understand any tips you can suggest.
This is actually not that hard. I'm glad that you asked the question. When I talked about our programs and the kind of work we do, which is community facing work, where what you're talking about, core beneficiary facing, grassroots field work. Actually, when we start solving a really hard problem like what my team is trying to do, we start with people who have experience in thinking about problem statements and hence an experience in development consulting, or when you have done other kinds of roles which were not fieldwork oriented, you have learned some critical skills. You have learned to think with first principles. You can think critically. You can take a problem statement and break it down. You can conduct research to build a better understanding of the landscape in which the problem exists, what other people are doing. We actually start with learning from other people's work to see if there are already promising solutions to the problems we want to solve so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So there is really a lot of work that happens in teams that are solving for real world problems, grassroots, community facing problems. And hence, there is a lot of value in having someone with that experience to then come and work directly with beneficiaries. And also, in that, you also learn how to do user research. If you have done any monitoring and evaluation kind of work, or you've done product research or user research or user design work, then also you bring a lot of value in early stages. So this is not really a problem at all. And I encourage you to look at some of our open roles and apply.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Sonali. I think, Sriram, this is a very interesting question, which I would want to redirect to you. Uh, I mean, how important does finances or money play in a role, in a non-profit like the Nudge?
Extremely important. Right. As a non-profit organization, we are dependent on philanthropic capital, otherwise sometimes loosely referred to as donations that come to us. So we raise money from corporates in India. For those of you who may not know, India is one of the only countries in the world which has a law that mandates corporates to donate money to charitable organizations. This law is here to stay for a long term. The law is already 10 years old. So there has been a lot of giving from Indian corporates to many, many charitable organizations in India. We are one of the recipients of that. We also raise money from foundations, or what is sometimes known as philanthropy, both in India and outside of India. And examples include, Nilekani Philanthropies, Tata Trust. These were the two organizations with whose support the Nudge was born. And today we work with about 40 corporates in India: HDFC Bank, Emphasis, Cisco, LinkedIn, Google, and many other organizations whose names you will find on our website. We also work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Skoll Foundation. These are some of the largest foundations in the world, whose primary business and purpose of existence is impact. All right, that is the reason why they exist. So we also raise capital from them. And there are also a few high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals who contribute to our work in their individual capacity. So these are the income streams. I'm very conscious in not using the word revenue. These are the income streams that we sort of rely on. And the idea is we understand deeply that this is not an infinite amount of capital that is available in the world. So the idea is to deploy the capital in a manner where they're able to find solutions to problems and leverage capital from the government or the private sector to scale those solutions. So that's the way that we look at the money. But yes, it is an important aspect. We don't commission any work within the organization unless and until we have raised the money for that. Right? So we are not a for-profit sitting on a lot of contingency and reserves, which we can dip into to bootstrap many of our initiatives. Some of our initiatives are bootstrapped, but I'm talking about fairly small quantum of numbers here. So more often than not, we start any initiative only after the money has been raised.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that very important point, Sriram. I think this is also a very common question that comes up in conversations that not only you would have, but I have as well. Sonali, I think this is also something that would have come to you as well. So glad that people are asking these kind of questions. Sonali, my next question is to you. Basically, this person wants to understand, right, that they've not have worked with the kind of stakeholders at the Nudge that we do work with. So how are you factoring that in while selecting a candidate? And we spoke a lot about attitude being, the most important criteria for us to, make our decisions. So how does that work? And do you think, someone with the right attitude work, and based on the skills we can fit them in? We did answer a certain variation of this, I do understand, but would love to hear your thoughts about this, Sonali.
Yeah. So to some extent, Sriram already alluded to this. When he hires people in fundraising, he's not looking for people who have already raised money as a fundraiser in another organization or had targets in a for-profit company. He's looking for people with specific skill sets and capabilities which are transferable. So if you think about working with stakeholders like government, policymakers, and academia, one of the great examples is our Indian Administrative Fellowship Program, where we bring in CXO level leaders who work with senior bureaucrats in state governments and central ministries. This is a very, very high stakes kind of an environment. And these are also people who have actually never worked with senior government bureaucrats in their past careers as such, and they're still able to successfully navigate that environment and drive large scale policy reform agenda through their roles in just 18 months. So it is testament to what is possible, which means that when you're working with stakeholders in for profit environments, you are also employing a lot of similar skill sets, like you want to understand who your audience is, you do your homework, you understand how to speak their language, you understand if you're negotiating with a stakeholder, you understand their incentives for being there as well. And so anything that you do in order to influence stakeholders or senior stakeholders in your for-profit environment or any other sector, it is you can employ those same skills in this environment. However, there is also an opportunity where you're coming into a team. There will already be people who will have this capability as well as experience, and you also get to have an opportunity to learn from their experience and get mentoring and coaching as well as you go through this. So the way we look at this is not that whether you have done exactly that job, but do you have the capability to learn as well as do this new job differently? Which means that if you can navigate conversations with difficult stakeholders in any other environment, you will be able to do this.
Got it. Got it.
If I may add, Shruti,
Sure,
with
please.
your permission, I think one of the ways that might be useful for the audience actually to go, perhaps hack is to go into one of our LinkedIn profiles and actually look at our LinkedIn connections. You'll find a lot of people from the nudge and actually look at their backgrounds. Right? Just to point a couple of examples, the person in the leadership team who leads the economic inclusion program that has been referred to in this conversation used to be a brand manager for Dettol and Cherry Polish in his previous avatar, right? So now he's solving for the poorest of the poor in the country. Right? If I have to take my own example and personalize it, I had absolutely no experience in fundraising or revenue management in any of my previous roles in the for-profit world, nor have I ever spoken to a single representative from the government in my previous world. Right? But has that been a barrier? Not necessarily. It's been a steep learning curve, no doubt about it. And I'm not going to complain about people who come with B2B experience. So yes, of course. So like Sonali said, there are transferable skill sets, but it's really the entrepreneurial mindset and the bent to solve problems that perhaps is a commonality among people who have been successful at large.
Got it. Got it. I think the best way to sum it up, Sriram, those examples definitely. Yeah, please do take a look at Sonali and Sriram's profiles, and look at other people associated with the nudge as well. I think you'll get a very good idea of the kind of transitions that people have made. For a lot of people, it's been quite different from what they've done. But I think what has united them is definitely the attitude, the intent to be a part of this journey, make those changes, and do their best in everything that they're doing. So definitely take a look at their LinkedIn profiles. I think we have time for two more short questions. Sriram, I'll direct this to you. Any books or resources that kind of talk about the philosophy of development that the nudge follows?
I wouldn't call myself a voracious reader, but I do have one recommendation of a TED Talk. So the title of this TED Talk is called "The Way We Think About Charity Is Dead Wrong." I repeat, the way we think about charity is dead wrong. It is delivered by a gentleman called Dan Palota. You will find this on YouTube. It's 20 minutes of your time that you will not regret.
Got it. Got it. Thanks for that insight.
Sonali might add some few books.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Anything, Sonali, that has helped you when you were doing your research about this space or about nudge?
I will actually point out that when I was thinking about making this career switch, I felt like I needed to prepare myself, I needed to learn or get a degree in development sector related courses, maybe a master's or something like that. And I actually enrolled in a program as well because I felt like I had skills, but I didn't know how I would apply those skills in a new sector. And when I joined the nudge, I was pleasantly surprised by how many people had made that exact plunge and were able to bring the right mindset in which they then discovered how to apply their skills to new problem statements. So I wouldn't worry too much about books and resources as much as I would say that bring the confidence, purpose orientation to solve problems, and the books and resources that you use to build and solve problems in any other sector are still relevant. A lot of my bookcase still reflects the kinds of books that my colleagues in other sectors read. So I think that books may not give you what a real world experience can give you.
Definitely,
Actually,
100%.
if I may add, since Shruti asked the question, the
Sure.
organization's name was born from the book called The Nudge, right? So
Oh, wow.
one may want to read the book. It's about behavioral nudges that can change people's behaviors. It's written by a Nobel laureate, so maybe that's a book that one can recommend to the audience.
Yeah, we'll also share these recommendations on our LinkedIn page so that you can take a look at it. Thank you for that interesting insight, Sriram. One question that's come about, I think this bit about the culture was something that we did answer, but there is a follow up on, how is it like within a social impact space when compared to a corporate workplace environment? Sonali, I'll direct this to you.
So organization culture within social impact sector is similar in many ways in the sense that you are solving problems, different in the sense that the problems are more complex and hence more demanding, which means that the risk of failure is much higher. So it requires you to be more relentless, you have to persevere, and you have to think much more rigorously. So that is one difference. In other ways, I think the organization culture is different because you are not just working with people who are motivated by the traditional incentives of a job, but they are also here because of purpose. And so the conversations you will have with people who are your colleagues and the kind of experiences you will have with them actually lead to stronger bonds, lifetime friendships, as well as a lot of personal learning and growth, which is different. So the fun of spending time with Sriram or Shruti or many others in the organization is very gratifying because I learn so much from just sitting and talking to them about their views on various things, which are sometimes unrelated to work. So I think the unrelated to work conversations are so much more fun. I have learned a lot about the world in general as a result of this. And I think of this as part of the culture because culture is not just the work we do, but also what we do non work related. We spend a lot of time together at work. Is that will you enjoy spending time with these people that you will work with? The answer is a resounding yes. And that it may not be a guarantee in many other organizations in the corporate sector, but it is definitely true in many social sector organizations and also at Nudge. Those are some of the things that come to mind, but add anything else, Sriram.
I don't know. I think all I'll say is we all of us spend a lot of our waking hours at work, right, doing whatever work we're doing. Ultimately, over a span of 30, 35 years, if I have to take that time frame and look back and say, was that worth it? And if I have to ask this question 10 years down the line, that answer should convince me and make that a life that was worthy, worth, worth living. That is something that I've increasingly developed that confidence over the last 13 years. Again, the first year was not a straight shooter it's not been a linear answer. But with every passing year for me over the last 13 years, the confidence in the fact that I have made the right decision to stay in the sector has only been increasingly justified. And I hope to continue that.
Got it. Got it. Considering we're getting a lot of questions and we're running a little short of time, we'll answer just one more, and then the rest of it, we'll do our best to reach out to you and answer those questions as well. You can reach out to Sriram and Sonali on their LinkedIn's, or you can, write to the Nudge on the LinkedIn page as well, and we'll do our best to answer the other questions for you. I think this is a very interesting question. Sriram, I'll mostly redirect this to you. Sonali, please do add your opinions. How do you source projects or decide which ones to pursue? What are the factors based on that? And, is there competition with other social sector orgs as well when you select and work on something?
So the selection of the problem statements directly stems from why do we do what we do, right? Which is poverty alleviation is what we care very deeply about. Within poverty alleviation, lack of access to education sometimes keeps people in poverty. Healthcare, we singularly focus on livelihoods, which means the means for an individual or a household to generate income in a sustainable manner, and thereafter savings, credit, etc., is what we focus on. So we look at audience first, right? So it is not generally livelihoods. Like Sonali mentioned a little while ago, we work with very specific target groups, like for example, small and marginal farmers, who are 80 million small and marginal farmers in India. According to 2011 census data, there are 23 million households in India who are referred to as the poorest of the poor. That's one of our target audiences. We work with adolescent youth, so youth in the age group of 18 to 30 years of age, who've not had the access to formal education for a variety of reasons, and therefore have to pursue vocational education and pursue different livelihood options. We work with a lot of social entrepreneurs, right? So one is direct impact. So it's always led by the audience. Who is the audience that we want to serve through this program? And it is not a sweeping brushstroke, right? Just like in the for-profit world, different customer segments or different sets of users have their own unique set of problems. And we look at audience out and say, what are the problem statements for this user? What are those solution hypotheses that we can develop? We design experiments around it. Some of them fail, some of them work. We iterate those experiments until we hit success. And then we try to scale that success by saying, how do we now look at the scale pathways? So it's always keeping the audience at the center and trying to construct a solution around them that works for them.
Sonali, anything you'd like to add here?
The only thing I will add is that when you talked about competition with other sectors, actually our strategy for how we will be able to enable large scale impact is in collaboration with others. We, as we say, we partner with governments, markets, and civil society organizations to build resilient livelihoods for all, which means that in order to solve a specific problem and our point of view on what the solution needs to be, based on that solution point of view, we then partner with relevant stakeholders, including social sector organizations. Our goal is really to see the problem solved. And whatever needs to happen and whoever needs to come on board to do justice to solving the problem at scale, we will mobilize their support and partner with them accordingly. So it is not about competition, it's actually so much more about solving the problem at scale. And that is also to the previous question, that's how we are different from the corporate sector, because we are not trying to build a product that will be better than others. We just want to see the problem solved at scale, and we want to partner with anybody and everybody who will be able to contribute meaningfully to solving the problem at scale.
Got it. So definitely the problem is what drives us, right? Trying to solve that overall arching mission of what we spoke about earlier, poverty alleviation within our lifetime through livelihoods is definitely what drives us here. We've actually extended a little bit on time, so we'll close out today. Thank you so much, Sriram, and thank you so much, Sonali, for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules and talking to everyone as well as talking to me. I think I learned so much as well during the process, and I'm hoping that everyone in the audience also got an insight into how life is like at a non-profit and just understand that journey better. I hope it also answers all those questions that you have as well about how my skills fit in here, about the comp bit, and anything else that comes to you in mind. Thank you so much. There are a couple of questions that we couldn't really answer as well. Some of the questions we are looking to answer in the comments. The rest of it we'll do our best to answer. Again, throwing it out there, feel free to reach out to Sriram and Sonali on LinkedIn. They'd be very happy to answer your questions, and feel free to reach out to anyone at the Nudge as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you for yet another Jigyasa. And please check out our careers page for any relevant opportunities. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sriram. Thank you, Sonali.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shruti.
Thank you.